Wallach on Law examines criminal cases and criminal justice and asks the question, we are tough on crime, but is that helping? Can we be smarter and make us safer?
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Ian Wallach is a criminal defense attorney and civil rights lawyer in Los Angeles and New York. His cases have ranged from defense of the accused to the prosecution of governments in their treatment of convicts. He's a former Los Angeles deputy public defender and a frequent contributor on legal issues to radio and television shows nationwide.
You're out of order! You're out of order! The whole trial is out of order!
You're gonna need a bigger boat. This country, our courts are the great levelers. In our courts, all men are created equal.
This is Wallach on Law. Here's your host, Ian Wallach.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Welcome to this week's edition of Wallach on Law. And today we're going to be talking again about the death penalty and exonerations, but pretty much really the death penalty and how we can educate others as to exactly the fire. What is the fire that we're playing with? And to do that, we're going to be speaking with two people. First, we're going to speak with Marc Asnin. He's creating a book, Final Words, which is a pretty fascinating project. He's going to tell you what that project is, what he hopes to do with it, and how you can see about, and what you can do to learn about it. And we're also going to speak with Ray Krone, who was set free after being wrongfully convicted based on total bunk science, based on bite marks, which has been totally debunked, and was also. There was DNA, which allowed him to prove his innocence. Wrongfully did 10 years for a murder that he didn't commit. He's going to talk to us about his experience on the inside and on the outside. So thanks for listening, and just thanks for keeping up the dialogue and letting people know that these issues are out there. And let's begin the show. Today, our first guest on the show is going to be is Marc Asnin, and Marc Asnin is a very celebrated photographer and journalist. He spent over 30 years capturing social injustice through his work. He's been published everywhere. He's been published in Life. He's been published in the New Yorker, New York Times Magazine. He's received a ton of accolades, including the Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award, among others. But lately, he has directed his attention to the utterances and the issue of those that we have condemned to die in creating a book called Final Words. And he's going to tell us about, rather than me tell you what the book is, I'm going to let Marc do it. Marc, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and really appreciate your interest in this really important human rights issue.
Before we dive in, can you let the listeners know what your book is, what your book looks like, and where you got your sources of information?
Sure. So the book is called Final Words, and it is the last 517 final statements that are available on the Texas Department of Corrections website. And these are either the final statements are recorded once the person who's been condemned by the state of Texas is in the death chamber, and they're spoken words, or their final statements that are written just prior to being executed. The idea of the book is for the public to look at this and to create a conversation about the death penalty in 2014, and for me personally, about the concept of dehumanization and how that has played a huge role in America and in the death penalty since it's been reenacted after the Supreme Court decision in 1976.
I think what people fail to realize frequently is because of the time associated with the legal rights that people have when they've been convicted or sentenced, especially sentenced to death, usually these people are executed. A substantial amount of period of time has passed between the act, even between the conviction date and their date of execution. So it's quite likely that the words that are being written and the words that are being uttered are from almost a completely different person than those who may have committed the act of which they were convicted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think somewhere it's between 7 and 8 years is the average. I mean, it's because of the legality and the appeal process, these people have changed a lot. A lot of these people have gone on to get their GEDs or other, college degrees. And I also think they've changed based on their experience being in jail and the community they've made on death row.
Can you give us an example of some of the statements and talk about what your take on the spectrum? I mean, are they? Yeah, give us an idea as to, if I was to open Final Words, what would I read?
Sure. I think that it's a broad spectrum. There are some people that talk about their innocence. They talk about the injustice of the criminal justice system in Texas. They talk about it from a race point of view. They talk about it from a economic class point of view. There are other people that own the crime they've committed, and they're asking for forgiveness. Some of them talk about how in that forgiveness they would hope that they have changed and that the society they live in wouldn't do the same horrific thing to them as they did to someone. A lot of people are reflecting on God. We see there's, people who've been converted, have embraced Islam. A lot of people relate to their Christian upbringing or finding Jesus. I think in general, the overall thing is that these people, and I can't stress that their people are asking for better treatment and better understanding than how these people and the crimes, they committed. They're understanding that they did wrong, but they would hope that the society would be able to say to them, we're not going to be what you were.
I've had the chance I've had the chance to see portions of your book, and if you're out there and if you want to take a look at what this book is and what it's going to be, if you go to www.neverlandpublications.com/final words, you'll be able to read it. And Mark, at the end of the interview, I'm going to ask you to direct the viewers to any other relevant websites. But when I looked at this, it was absolutely chilling. It's easy to hate a statistic. It's easy to hate somebody to read, okay, what this person did in 1996 or in 2004 to this person is inhumane. I'm going to turn my my empathy button off, my compassion button off, as we get ready to kill this person via lethal injection, which is horrific, or one of the other ways available. But when you read these, all of a sudden they stop becoming stats. To me, it felt like they became people. Like I felt, wow, someone's getting ready to kill this person, and they're getting ready to kill this person in my name. Is that the type of result that you were going for? Why did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, on a deep personal level, yes, that's what I hope, that people would read these words and be moved. In my name, this is what society's doing. No, that's not the society. That's not the country I believe in. I'm not believing that America wants to live by the same rules that George Bush once compared, the evil axis, North Korea, Iran, and Iraq. These are countries that use the death penalty also. So, yes, you're 100% correct, Ian. That's what I hope will be the outcome. But the other part I'm hoping is it creates a conversation. And even at the end of that conversation, if someone walks away thinking, okay, I still support the death penalty, at least they were reading these words and were exposed to them.
And they're more informed. They're more informed, and they have the power and the ownership of knowing what they're signing on for. A lot of people might read these words and say, all right, this is compelling, this is compassionate, but I'm sorry, this has to be the sanction. This is the most efficient way that we have of doing it. It's not terribly efficient, but this is what we have. So I'm on board, but at least they're more educated.
Yes, absolutely. This is about a conversation to educate people, and the most important part of it is the humanization, because I would put forward that we as a people, as you eloquently put it, we do not want to dehumanization any part of our society. That's not who we are.
I would say that is a general goal. I mean, I think that's a very noble and general goal, but there is probably no area that is as dehumanitized as either the death penalty or the incarceration system that we have in place right now. I mean, lethal injection is a perfect metaphor for that, because in lethal injection, the common three-step approach, which used to be the most commonplace, the first was just to numb the person, to make them look like they're sleeping. We want to take any human element out of the person that we're about to execute, or incarcerate in the long run, but definitely in the world of criminal justice, and even more importantly in the area of the death penalty. I think dehumanization is a huge goal for its proponents, because that's the only way that it's probably going to be able to continue happening.
I agree, and I think if you sit down and you have this book in front of you, that's the best way, or one of the best ways to combat that, is do it from an emotional point of view.
Now, have there been any public readings, or do you know, are there going to be any public readings? I mean, it seems to me that would be incredibly compelling. I mean, I certainly couldn't see this as a junior high school play, but I could certainly see, people wanting to try to give voice as well. Are you aware of any of these? Yes. Oh, fantastic. And what have they been, or where will they be?
Right. So the ultimate goal of the book is that we're trying to raise enough money in a crowdfunding campaign that every public high school in the 32 states that still practice state-sanctioned death will receive a book and an incredible curriculum, so that high school students can look at this from an academic point of view, through a social studies class, through a civics class, but also through the visual and through the performing arts. So you could have a class in a high school in Kansas, and they could embrace this through the performing arts. They could, make
it's exciting, and in line with what you're talking earlier about dehumanization. I was just realizing that, no one ever talked to me about the death penalty when I was a kid. They thought that was inappropriate subject matter for children. And it seems like your take on it is, no, look, if we're going to do this, we're going to own it, right? And so we have to include all measures of all elements of our society, which includes those old enough to question.
Right. I mean, I think when you're in high school and you're at a point where you're questioning society and you're questioning the world that you live in, I think it is a very good time to put that forward. Now, this generation is fighting the battles for social justice and for issues that, maybe my generation hadn't looked at. I'm hoping that this generation, with this book and curriculum, can help bring a new conversation, and then ultimately the abolishment of the death penalty.
Well, even if I think that anybody who understands what you're doing would probably get that that's your motive, and I certainly share that same motive for you. I think your book, what's so compelling about it is that it has a broader base. I mean, there's going to be an element of morbid curiosity. People are going to want to see, hey, wow, what do people say before they die? But it doesn't. When you read the book, there's no advocacy in this book. It's just pure fact.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, I would put forward that, and being transparent, that sure, there's advocacy, but even if there are high school students that decide that they're still going to support this punitive, act of state-sanctioned death, I'm okay with that, because I think it could affect them years later. It could affect other things they're thinking about the world. So we want to bring an end to the death penalty as soon as possible, but this book opens up many other questions.
Sure.
Than just, state-sanctioned death.
It is an amazing. Listen, we got to wrap this up. But it's amazingly compelling. I directed the people to the Neverland Publications /Final Words webpage. I don't know if there's any other places that you want to recommend, or advocacy groups that you'd like to mention the listeners go to.
Sure. We have a website, final-words.org, that's specifically only about the book. It is a full resource section about advocacy groups and resources to learn more about state-sanctioned death. We're running a campaign, We the People, Selfie Against the Death Penalty, and also something about photographers stand against the death penalty. So again, it's final-words.org.
And if you're listening at home, I recommend, and I think you will, I recommend please to tell yourself you're just going to spend 2 minutes on it. Look at it. Not only is it beautifully laid out, but you're going to find it incredibly compelling, disturbing, and thought-provoking. Marc, I got to wrap this up, but I want to tell you, this is such a creative way to attack the issues, and it's a way to address, to let these issues reach minds across the nation at a time when people have the power to form their own opinions, and I hope that it is as influential as you're trying to make it. And I got to tell you, it is a beautiful piece of work. Thanks so much for making this.
Thank you, and I appreciate everyone's support, and I hope this crowdfunding campaign can bring an end to the death penalty. Thank you, Ian.
My pleasure. Thanks a bunch. So that is one way that one person has chosen to educate people and continue the dialogue about the death penalty. Now let's talk to somebody who came pretty close to facing the death penalty himself. And now welcoming to the show, to Wallach on Law, we have with us Ray Krone. And Ray Krone is an exoneree. From my understanding, he's actually the 100th person who was exonerated on death row. And his conviction was based on another form of bunk science, on bite mark science. And it's a pretty disturbing conviction, but at least the way he's going to talk to you about his story is pretty fascinating. And the work that he's doing right now conveys a message that is definitely worth listening to. So, Ray, thank you so much for taking time and joining us today.
Well, thank you.
Listen, I'm sure this has happened before, but I want to bring you back to a dark time, back to 1991. And if you can just let sort of the listeners know what was happening, what happened to you in April of that year, and when did you first learn that someone had been killed?
Yeah, at that time in 1991, I was working for the post office. I was a mailman in a local neighborhood bar that I had been going to a few months. The night bartender was found stabbed to death in the men's bathroom. No robbery, no break-in, so they believed it had to be somebody that knew her, somebody had a relationship with her. They talked to one of the co-workers. They talked to all the co-workers, but one of the co-workers mentioned my name. I was questioned about being a boyfriend. I wasn't a boyfriend, but they noticed I had crooked teeth. They remembered a mark on the body. They had their local medical examiner take a look at it, say it was a match. 2 days after they found Kim's body, I was arrested for it based on his conclusion that my teeth matched marks on the body.
Now, this was a medical examiner, or was this the dentist that testified at the trial?
And actually, in my case, the local medical examiner was not board-certified forensic odontologist, so the prosecutor hired a bite mark expert from Nevada who testified at my trial.
Okay. But before you got arrested, let me just, you were sort of atypical from a good deal of exonerees. You were a veteran. You were an Air Force veteran. Is that correct?
Yes, I did 6 years in the U.S. Air Force. Upon graduation from high school, I got an honorable discharge. I actually had a top-secret clearance for the job I held. A couple years later, I got a job at the post office and was working for the post office at the time of my arrest. I had no criminal record. I didn't even have traffic citations.
And so basically, one officer looked at your teeth, and that's what set in motion the series of events that followed.
Yes, and it was something kind of new that had been going around at that time, a new type of identifying, a new type of forensics techniques or whatever, and when they seen this mark on her breast and on her neck, they right away identified as a bite mark. And I did not have even teeth. I had a car accident when I was a young man and had a broken jaw. And over the years, the root canals and some of the dental work that had been done was not even anymore. And right away, they focused on my teeth. Had a dentist take casts of my teeth. The next day, I was arrested for the murder.
Unbelievable. And then how long was your trial? How many days was your trial? The first one?
3.5 days.
3.5 days.
Appointed attorney. Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, at least now, out here in Los Angeles, which is predominantly where I practice, the court-appointed attorneys, and I am one, can be absolutely fantastic. And I spent 5 years with the Public Defender's Office here in L.A., and I was proud. They were dedicated attorneys. They knew the courts. They were seasoned trial attorneys. They were also pretty decently compensated. But I understand throughout the country that's really, really not the case. How did you feel about the caliber of your representation at trial?
Well, I mean, he might have been a great attorney if he was reasonably paid. Now, a private attorney, of course, has their own clients. In my case, when the judge appointed this man to represent me, he went on to grant him $5,000 as his payment in a capital murder case. And I could tell people you can't even get a divorce for $5,000. So he really didn't put any effort in it, which is why just 7 months after they found Kim's body, I'm sitting in a courtroom facing capital murder charge.
When you're in that courtroom, and that the dentist got up and began to talk about this bite mark science, this completely debunked bite mark science. How convincing did it seem to you? What were you thinking, and what did it feel like?
But I was obviously dumbfounded. I mean, I hadn't really heard of anything, but of course I knew I didn't bite it. There's no reason why a bite mark would possibly be on there. Yeah, it's for clarification. This was not like a bite mark where you perceived it had every tooth in your mouth, evident. There was only a couple teeth on the upper bite mark area that could be identified, a couple marks, and the bottom bite mark had 3 or 4 scratches on it. It wasn't a full set of teeth. But because of my dentition, as I say, wasn't, straight alignment, they identified one of those marks for sure as being my front tooth and kind of lined up the other ones however they wanted to make a match.
Unbelievable. Now, your first trial was I take it, was reversed, and you had a second trial. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, after 3 years on death row, the Arizona Supreme Court overturned my conviction. The prosecution withheld a videotape made by the bite mark expert till the very last minute. My attorney objected. The judge allowed it in. My attorney asked for a 30-day continuance then to address this new evidence, which was just the day before trial. We got this videotape. The judge said denied and said, no, we need to get this trial rolling. And, of course, the Arizona Supreme Court overturned it, said, as a defendant, you have a right to know what evidence is going to be used against you and received in a timely manner. They said that the judge was wrong, and they ordered a new trial.
And then the same thing happened again. Same witnesses, same staff, same cast of characters?
Well, actually, no. This was a little bit different than my first trial because by now the family had come to visit me on death row. They'd seen the situation that shackled hand and ankles and being handcuffed to a table so I could pick the phone up to talk to my mom. And the people were executed in Arizona during those 3 years I was there. And so my folks cashed in their retirement plans and mortgaged their house, and other friends and family members back in Pennsylvania took up collection. We were actually able to hire an attorney out of Southern California. Now, we couldn't come nowhere near the hundreds of thousands of dollars a capital murder case normally costs, but he was familiar with my case. He said, look, just pay the expenses. I believe in Ray. I want to represent him. This was Chris Ford. He was out of L.A. Yeah, Chris is now a judge in El Centro.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, that's absolute dedication. And one thing that I do love about being a lawyer is that we do, a large percentage of, myself included, do a fair amount of pro bono work. When you see it's the right case, you dive in, not for the money, but because it feels good. And the fact that it happened in your case, but even those kind of costs, $300,000 of costs, are astronomical. I mean, when I speak with you, Mr. Krone, you're clearly educated. You're eloquent. You had family support, and you would agree that all of these things contributed to you being able to ultimately get the exoneration that you got. Is that a fair statement?
It is, and it's absolutely true that it wasn't the strength of me. It was the strength that I got through others that supported me and believed in me. I only had to tell my family and friends once that I didn't do it. They believed me. My attorney, Chris, and other people came to help me. I ended up, in comparison to my first trial, my second trial lasted 7 weeks. We had 3 bite mark extras testify for the defense alone. There was only over 500 exhibits introduced, and the truth was coming out. We actually found out that they had taken swabs from the bite mark on her breast, and the DNA from that swab that was a saliva sample did not match me.
What it also means, what I don't think people realize is people are like, all right, okay, we got it wrong. We locked somebody up for a crime they didn't do. That's terrible. But what I don't think people realize is it's a public safety issue because the individual, in your case, went out and sexually assaulted and choked a 7-year-old girl afterwards, right? The individual who actually committed the murder.
Absolutely. Within a few months of the murder, he committed that crime and was actually arrested for it.
I wish I knew how. I mean, I think a great judge once told me that, in his opinion, it's sad. He thinks that the burden of proof actually gets lower. I mean, it's legal, but he goes, the way we perceive it, it actually gets lower the more heinous the crime. People are so afraid of letting the wrong person go that they're willing to accept anything when they're in the jury box. And I hope that's not true. And if so, it definitely needs changing.
Again, it scared me. Actually, after being through 2 trials and having lost both of them, I just hope and prayed I'd never have to have another jury trial. That if I ever had another trial, that I wouldn't even go before a jury because I had no reason to trust them.
If you're listening out there, if you're in the box, read the instructions, apply the instructions. They tell you what to do, but and please follow them, because absent that, egregious mistakes like that which was put upon Mr. Krone could continue. One thing I wanted to ask you is, I mean, you are smart, you are eloquent, you were able to ultimately get some DNA affirmation, but I imagine that you knew some similarly situated people to yourself in prison who didn't have those skills, who didn't have those resources, and are left to you unattended.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And the difficulty of just understanding of the system that now has you in prison wrongfully, and how this system works, and to get help is just so difficult. Again, like I said, my family had a mortgage to their house, and again, it wasn't a lot of money, but there's people that just don't have the family support. They don't have even the intelligence communication skills to even be able to tell their story and know where to go to ask for help that they need.
It's frightening. I think the work that you're doing right now. So right now you work with witnesstoinnocence.org. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Witness to Innocence is the only national organization of death row survivors, exonerees, men and one woman that were exonerated from a death sentence of proven to be innocent. We have people from all over the country. It was started by Sister Helen Prejean, of Dead Man Walking fame. And she started in 2002. Yeah, and then it's support. First of all, I guess it's therapy for all of us that have been on death row. It's somebody to talk to that actually walked in those same shoes and know what it's like to be sitting in a courtroom facing a death sentence and then sitting on death row and know that the state wants to kill you. And so it's part of support group for each of us that have been through that. But also we've raise our voices in unity, tell our stories around the country to communities, to legislatures, and work for the abolition of the death penalty. And we've had our members in all the states that abolished the death penalty in the last 6 years. Our members have spoken to the legislatures there, and even with governors in those states. And each time they mention the fact that the possibility of executing an innocent person that exonerations have shown is get sentenced to death for something they didn't do. It has clearly weighed heavily on their minds when they made the decision for abolition.
Well, it is admirable work, and I think we know now with the case of Cameron Todd Willingham that it's probably more certain than not. We now probably have some discernible proof that our country has engaged in the murder of an innocent person. But listen, the work that you're doing is fantastic. People, if you're out there, if you want to read more about it, you can go to www.witnesstoinnocence.org. You can also read an article that Mr. Krone wrote in the SF Chronicle, the SF Gate against the death penalty. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the work that you do. I can't apologize enough on behalf of everyone in this country for the 10.5 years that you experienced. But just thanks for opening our eyes as to the fact that this can happen pretty much to anybody, even as someone as law-abiding and country-serving as yourself. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the work that you do.
You're certainly welcome, and thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you and to your listeners.
I think we can all agree that what happened to Mr. Krone is absolutely abhorrent and vile and totally avoidable. Also terribly expensive. We probably spent over $1 million on his 10.5 years of incarceration. That's over $500,000 there, plus the trials, plus any civil settlements, all to do something absolutely inhuman and let a killer go free. Listen, what can you do about it? Well, if you're fortunate enough to serve on a jury, which is great, and you have doubts, you are totally entitled and should check that not guilty box. Vote not guilty. If the crime seems terrifying, voting guilty and being wrong, you can't ever fix that, and that's letting someone sketchy and dangerous go free. That's what the law tells you to do. If you have doubts, actually stand by them. Other stuff you can do, check out their work at witnesstoinnocence.org. Check out what the Innocence Project is doing. Is innocence.org. Go to Marc Asnin's Final Words webpage. You can find out what we do here at change at renovatejustice.com. Email me your thoughts, change at renovatejustice. I'll get back to you. And if the subjects are interesting, we'll put them on the show. You can find out what we do at renovatejustice.com. And if you want to talk to me, you can contact me at wallachlegal.com. A big thanks to Marc Asnin and Ray Krone for their work and for their time. And remember, folks, please, let's just keep using our heads. Let's stop using our hate, and let's make our justice system just. This is Ian Wallach, Wallach on Law. Thanks for checking in.
Revolution never come with a warning. A revolution never sends you an omen. A revolution just arrive like the morning. Ring the alarm, we come to wake up the snoring. They're telling you to never worry about the future. They're telling you to never worry about the torture. They're telling you that you will never see the